Hey, welcome in. Coming to you live from the capital city of the great state of Texas. We are overlooking downtown Austin and the University of Texas. It's the weekly podcast that understands the pride and tradition of the Texas football program will never be entrusted to the timid of the week. And what a great time to be a Longhorn. There's a lot going on. It's the Eyes on Texas multicast. We're a product of the day of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network. We are powered by our presenting partners at Grande Equipment and our four other founding partners. I'm Aaron Hogan, morning show host at The Horn here in Austin, Texas. He is the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, Mike Craven, also joined by our digital producer, Nolan Hogan. It's a multicast keeps you on top of all things Texas football and all things football in Texas. And it's available to you on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football YouTube channel, thehornfm.com, and Austin's YouTube channel as well, and available for download on iTunes and Spotify. You can also follow our show and posts and everything on Twitter, Eyes on Texas FB, Instagram, Eyes on Texas Pod, and now on Facebook, we are live at Eyes on Texas Podcast. Hello, Mike Craven. How are you? Merry Christmas, my friend. How are we?
Merry Christmas. Doing pretty well. Just gearing up for the UIL state championships. Put my old school high school reporter cap back on and head up to AT&T Stadium to watch 12 games over 4 days.
It's one of the best 4-day stretches in football, period, anywhere.
I advise everybody to do it one time. Take in a day or two at the state championship. You get to go see Jerry World for relatively cheap. You know, it's $20 to park. I think it's $20 for a ticket, right? It's usually like $1,000 to park anywhere near there. So you can get in that stadium, sit wherever you want to, walk around it, and watch 24 different communities kind of converge into one and watch a lot of different football. What's cool about being there the whole time, though, is Wednesday night it'll be 2A schools, like Timpson's playing on 2. And then by the time 6A rolls around on Saturday, there's 30,000 plus people in there, and you're watching Duncanville, North Shore, and so watching it grow, watching the different communities, it's a fun event.
Oh man, unlike any other, it really is. I mean, saw Army Navy this week, Texas OU, the Masters. There are a few things in sports that we heard them talking about last night on Sunday Night Football. If you were watching the Cowboys and Eagles beatdown, Mike Tirico talked about it. That coming up this week. I mean, no one else does it like Texas. No. They really don't. To play in that stadium that is a jewel in the world. And as you said, to have the different communities from 1A to 2A to 3, 6-man, all the way through, coming through to Duncanville and North Shore and South Oak Cliff again. And Port Neches Groves. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we live in Austin, so all the Central Texas teams got knocked out this weekend, Wimberley and Liberty Hill and Westlake. But either way, it's a great weekend for football. And it's just, the purity of football. I mean, it's just high school football at its best.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you'll be there all weekend, take a pillow, and write some stories, and you put on your old high school football hat, which I love. And you can, before we get to telling you about Grande Equipment, get to what we're coming up with on our Baltic podcast tonight will be a lot of Texas-Washington chatter coming up in our third quarter. We're starting to really drill down on Texas and Washington in the national semifinal. It's 21 days from our recording day on this Monday, so 3 weeks out. So start getting in on that. Also, it's a big recruiting week for the Longhorns in the Portal Madness, or as some I've seen taken to call it, the Portal Combat for players, and high school recruiting. That's all coming together. It's a confluence of a lot. These coaches are going a million miles an hour. Plus, we've got the Longhorns being honored. A lot of accolades for Texas football players here over the weekend. We'll get to that. But, Mike, tell them about Dave Campbell's and the Republic of Football and how you can be a part of it to get the best and most extensive coverage of high school football, the recruiting we're going to talk about, and beyond that.
Yeah, TexasFootball.com right now. If you go there and go to the state page, you can get a breakdown of every single state championship game that's coming up, from 6A Division I all the way through the 6-man games in 1A that are going to kick off on Wednesday, from the game previews to recruits to watch, all the way through that kind of stuff. So we will be rocking and rolling for 4 straight days there in Arlington.
Before we get started with our first quarter, let's thank our presenting partner at Grande Equipment, my friend Wes Murray and his team, Weston and the whole crew. They understand your reputation when you have a heavy project or a big project or small is getting it done on time, on budget, and hassle-free. And that's what they've done for 31 years. They're not in the equipment business. They're in the relationship business. They want to make sure you have the equipment you need for any project of any size, the right piece, job site ready and hassle-free every time, because they know that budget, that time is precious. They make sure it's there all the time. That's why they've grown like they have. Equipment from all major manufacturers, Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, Volvo, and more. They're independent, so they can get you whatever you need when you need it. And it's sales, rentals, and they can refurbish your piece of equipment. If you got an old piece of equipment sitting in the barn somewhere and you want to bring it back to life and take it back to brand new, they can do that too in their refurb shot at Grande Equipment. Also have a new great energy sector supporting solar projects all over the country and now all over the world. Pile driver application the new and used equipment with the capability of renting statewide and nationally. Grande is your international but local independent equipment company. They're small and nimble, as Wes always tells me, but they play in the big leagues at grandeequipment.com. Remember, they don't overpromise, they overdeliver. And in our fourth quarter, Mike, we'll get into New Orleans and the fun of New Orleans, which is coming up in 3 weeks. And Wes Murray's the guy to hang out with in New Orleans. I'm just going to tell you.
Okay.
Is your guy. He'll be the tour guide.
I'm going to be there for a whole week.
He likes Harrah's and the Harrah's Casino and the gambling a little bit, a little sports gambling. He loves football, and he loves a good time. But he's one of the best people you'll ever be around. You'll like to hear my thoughts on New Orleans, which is coming up in 3 weeks. I know our friend Richard Strever from One Source Gas is going to be there. I believe Carlos Carrion, the Texas mortgage guy who brings you our first quarter, is planning to try to get over there for the game. Everybody trying to get there for the first massive Longhorn game on a national stage in 15 years. And that's where we'll kick off our first quarter, brought to you by the Texas mortgage guy, Carlos Carrion. By the way, Greg Eckert going to go too. I think all of our founding partners are going to be in New Orleans for this event. Greg Eckert, the Brain Vault Technology, he's planning on going. It's everybody. We're all going. It's going to be awesome. We thank them so much for making this thing grow like it has.
Grab a beignet together.
Yeah, have a beignet, and well, you don't imbibe anymore, so
yeah, that's all I know about
sugar and sports and gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah, beignets, sugar and sports gambling. I like it.
Yes,
but there's something for all flavors in New Orleans. I know that. It's an adult town, but it's going to be a great game. All right, Carlos Carrion brings it to you. He is thetexasmortgageguy.com, online at thetexasmortgageguy.com. How about the accolades for the Longhorns? Let's start out our first quarter. Friday night, we played this for you. The biggest Longhorn won the biggest award so far of a national award for a Longhorn. It was that Friday night Home Depot College Football Award Show. Here's how it looked if you were out and about and didn't see Tavondre Sweat become the first Texas player in nearly 5 decades to win the Outland Trophy.
Here's what I love. 2 on the offense, 1 on the defense, an outstanding trio who all served as team captains. The 2023 Outland Trophy winner is Texas defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat. He's the 4th Longhorn to win the Outland Trophy and the first one in over 4 decades. And look, Mom and the teammates, Tavondre all smiles. Yeah, celebrating, Sam. You know, Sweat was an unstoppable force, making it very hard for anyone to run against Texas. What made him so unstoppable?
Well, he was also an immovable object. He plays with so much power. Tavondre Sweat is so hard to move in the pocket. Double team, triple team. You can't move him. But then secondly, he plays with great hands. That's one thing that stands out about his game. Yes, he's 6'4", 362, but he has excellent hand placement. Last but not least, he's extremely disruptive. You see PBUs, you're going to see touchdowns scored, you're going to see blocked field goals. So when he's on the field, he completely obliterates an offense's game plan, and that's what makes him so special.
Touchdown scored, you mentioned hands. He made a name for himself with a touchdown catch in the Big 12 championship game where he gave us a Heisman pose there, Jen.
Yeah, and if you don't think we're going to ask about that, you are sorely mistaken. He is the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and yet we saw you on offense as well. Break down that play for us. What'd you see, and how did it happen?
First off, we did it the day before, you know what I mean? And I ran the route at practice, and I bobbled the ball, and Coach Sark was like, all right, Sweat, you better not play with me. So coming to the game, I was like, all right, we got this. And when it happened, I was like, oh, I'm wide open. The ball is coming to me. And, you know, I didn't think about it, and it happened.
It was fantastic, and we talked about the celebration, giving us the Heisman pose. All right, take us inside that Texas locker room as you guys prepare for this semifinal game. What's the vibe? What's the mindset like as you guys try to finish business?
I mean, it's going to be a great opponent. I mean, that's a great team we're going against, and we just can't wait to play against them, and we'll find out the results when we play them on New Year's.
Now, I read that you're a mama's boy, and I see that necklace that you're showing us there. Tell us about the people in that necklace.
I'll give all shout out to my mom, man. Without that woman, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of things, you know. And that woman just stayed on my neck 24/7. And all I could just say, I love that woman to death, and she's like my right hand.
She kept you focused. She kept you in the game. We all are appreciative to all the moms out there who are a big reason why you guys are celebrating these awards tonight. Congratulations.
All right, Mike, you've been around Texas football a long time. You've never seen an Outland Trophy winner because the last one to win it was 1977. That was Brad Shearer. Before that, it was 2 and 3 years back in 63 and 65. Tommy Nobis and Scott Appleton. So rarefied air for one Tavondre Sweat, the Big Bear.
He earned it, and I think his progression is a representative of what the Longhorns have been able to do the last couple of years. You know, from laughing on the bus after that Iowa State game, you know, to having an Outland Trophy winner, you know, at the defensive tackle position. I think the toughness that unit and the talent over the last couple of years that unit has had has really like laid the foundation of this. I would say defensive tackle on defense and running back on offense have been the position groups that have really like been the catalyst for this change.
Yeah. And, you know, as we've talked about on the morning show I do in Austin with Rod Babers, it's he's the most accomplished and decorated Texas defensive player since Brian Arakpo. If you go back to when Brian was a senior and he was on the national title team that played for one in 2009, the Colt McCoy team. But really, if you think about the guys who were honored before Rack and previous to that, that's really where the malaise of Texas football began. And I think to credit to Sark, credit to Bo Davis, credit to Kyle Flood, they've come in with a vision, and it started with big humans, right? And it's about getting tougher. It's about line of scrimmage ready for the SEC. But they seem to be a little bit ahead of schedule because of the development and guys like Tavondre Sweat. So now, you know, much like when Texas was playing for national championships in 2009 and previous to that, the lines of scrimmage are really, really good. You have Kelvin Banks, who somehow was second team All Big 12 according to the AP. I don't know if I get that. But you've got, you know, Byron Murphy was the Big 12's Defensive Player of the Year with Tavondre Sweat as the Big 12's Defensive Player of the Year. So defensive lineman, I should say, and Defensive Player of the Year. And your offensive line has been a strength this year for your run game. It's really been the change. We've talked about it since we started this multicast back in April. Can they find the lines of scrimmage? And it really is what's driving this entire thing. I know people love the big plays and the explosive plays, and it's been about the lines of scrimmage. That's been the single biggest development at this program in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think when we look back at the Mack Brown golden years, we think of Vince Young and some of the skill guys and the Thorpe Award winners on the defensive side of the balls and the battle that they had with the wide receivers. But they were really good up front. You know, Casey Studdard was a tough dude. Jonathan Scott was a really good player. Brian Robeson on the Tim Crowder, like those kind of Roderick Wright, like those kind of guys provided some toughness on a Texas team that wasn't known for being very tough. I think one of the things that we should credit Sark more for doing is he didn't have any wasted talent stay on that roster. Like a lot of those guys that are starring for this team right now were dudes who could have just gotten lost in the shuffle because they were holdovers from a previous era. You know, either they could have left and gone a different way and done whatever, or Sark could have ran them off in favor of guys that he was bringing in. But he made a lot of the dudes he inherited a lot of money. And that's going to help recruit that next crop of guys because he has proof of concept of developing players from, I wonder if this guy is going to live up to his potential to this dude's winning the Outland and maybe a first-round draft pick.
And that's on the heels of last year where in year two, Moro Ojimo and Keandre Coburn developed more than anybody thought they would have.
He's doing it year in, year out now with guys that he didn't even pick.
Or he identified.
Right.
Who do we want to go forward with after year one? The rant on the bus. And who do we need to let go? And go ahead and encourage to move on. And they identified the right ones, and that's going to be big when we get into our second quarter, talking about portal. You know, Sark and this staff are going to be picky in the portal. They're not looking for projects, or they want production. They want guys like A.D. Mitchell that can come in and they know they can play, and they're going to fit what they've built. They don't want to, disturb the culture that these guys have built. Let's be fair about that. And it's one of the things I will say about this chance to win a national championship. You don't know that you can regenerate this culture again. I told all my Texas Ranger fans this year, being an Astro fan that watched the Astros win a couple World Series, because they were like, oh man, whether we beat the Astros or not, we're going to be good for a long time. Take it. Run with it. I mean, you do not know. You just do not know in sports how that culture is going to work, how it all comes together. Things fall your way. The Florida State injury to Jordan Travis, who knows beyond that? I'm not saying, it's a desperate thing, but you have a chance to win a national championship this year. And I think Sark, that's not lost on him. And I don't think it's lost on this team. No. We've talked about, all year, Mike, on this multicast, that this team's come together. And they survived some tough injuries. They survived a middle-of-the-year stretch because they beat Alabama, obviously, which set the table for what they are. But they survived some tough games. And here they are with a month to prepare for a really good team But man, don't be thinking we're going to be good for a long time. Just try to get this one, and because you never know.
And to your point, the conversation was always win the Big 12 championship game, sneak into the college football playoff, and wow, how awesome of a season would that be in year 3 before you go to the SEC. We didn't talk, and I didn't hear many people talk much about what happened once they got to the college football. It was just getting there, and then you can build off of that into something bigger down the line. All of a sudden, you wake up and you go, the team we're probably most scared of is the team we've already beaten.
Alabama.
Right? And so like Texas has a legit chance, a more than a fighter's chance to go and win this college football playoff. And I think it's why this is going to be the best college football playoff we've had so far. Is I could tell you any of those 4 teams wins the national championship, and you'd believe it equally.
100%.
And I think for Texas, that's a great sign. There's not a Georgia there. There's not this team that like is the Goliath that you have to go slay. They're all trying to figure this out together. Not many of the guys on any of these rosters have ever done what's about to happen here. Somebody's going to win a championship for the first time. Why not Texas?
Yeah, and we'll talk about our third quarter, the actual matchup with Washington, but you did play them a year ago, so you have a scouting report. A lot of the players are back. They have it on YouTube, which makes it a great game. And you know the Alabama, if you get to Alabama, if they beat Michigan somehow, well, look out. You already have that game plan ready to go, and it's about repeat and rinse and repeat. And then Michigan kind of lines up with you because you're very good on the lines of scrimmage.
I think it's a good match. I think Michigan's a good matchup.
Texas. Real good for Texas. All right, so before we get through our first quarter, brought to you by the TexasMortgageGuy.com, Carlos Carrion. Tavondre Sweat of your teams were Outland Trophy, first-team All-American 5 times, including today by the first-team AP nationally. AP Defensive Player of the Year.
You're welcome,
first-team All-Big 12, huh?
Said you're welcome, Tavondre. Sorry, I was in there.
Big 12. Yeah, you're an AP voter.
Yes.
And so you first team. By the way, Xavier Worthy also first-team All-American for his receiving skills and the punt return and the all-purpose that he is. Those are the 2 most accomplished Longhorns this year, Sweat and Worthy. As far as accolades, A.D. Mitchell, AP Newcomer of the Year, Big 12 Newcomer of the Year, second-team All-Big 12. This is the kind of portal players Texas wants to identify that want to be there for the right reasons. A.D. Mitchell wanted to be back in Texas. He wanted to be closer to a child that he has. He'd won 2 national championships with Georgia. This guy was not suffering. And if you saw Georgia play this year, they could have used A.D. Mitchell. I mean, they were looking for an explosive receiver. But he wanted to be in Texas.
He jumped off the sinking ship, and got to Texas.
He was right. But so, wins a Big 12 championship, now gets all these awards. But now he wanted to play in an offense that was going to showcase his NFL talent. And I think we've watched A.D. Mitchell all year, one of the great route runners you'll see in college football. Or my friend Rod Babers, our friend, talks about him all the time. And his route running is elite. His ability to put a foot in the ground, hips, turn, get you turned the wrong way. He's the NFL now sees. Xavier Worthy is just pure speed, pure quickness and speed and explosiveness. But as he is on Twitter at Mo City Mitch,
I love
that dude is seriously a great route runner, and he's big, great body control, great catch radius. He's going to be a real good player in the National Football League.
Yeah, that's another good point. Like Sark has developed guys he inherited into NFL draft picks, probably above their stock when he got them. He's developing his own guys into NFL draft picks that he's recruited right out of high school. And with like A.D. Mitchell, he's got proof of concept of the portal that if you can come here, even from a program like Georgia, we can put you in a position that elevates you even further. That's going to help when we talk the transfer portal and recruiting later. Yeah. The proof's in the pudding. And for a long time, Texas had no proof of concept on the development front. They could give you the shiny objects and the big stadium and the nice crowd and all the cool things that come with it, but there was no here's a guy that we made better. A lot of dudes that are in the NFL right now on those teams are having better NFL careers than they had college careers at Texas.
Well, then you think about...
And that's not true anymore. Like, they're getting developed now, and that's going to get you that next level of
in this
prospect.
day and age, I mean, it's culture, and it's, it's worth its weight in gold, because we'll talk about coming up in the portal. There are 3 Longhorn safeties in the portal, big part because they all got beat out by a walk-on. That Michael Taft walked in here, and he's a starter, opposite Derek Williams moving forward. I mean, walk-ons are developing too. He's from Westlake. He was a heck of a player with the Chaps on 2 state title teams, but came in as a preferred gray shirt, and here he is starting, and that's why guys are, I'm behind a walk-on and a 5-star. That's really good, and they're recruiting Makuba from Clemson, and they're recruiting these other guys. I may have to go somewhere else. That's just kind of the way that goes. But, that also proves, to the point of Michael Taft, the Taft daddy as we call him, it doesn't matter what your star rating was or where you come from. If you produce and you do it, we're putting you on the field, period. Jed Bush, another example of those guys. Hey, we're looking for production. We don't need hype. We want guys that can play. All right, so that's our first quarter. Closed on time by our man Carlos Carrion, the Texas Mortgage Guy, online at thetexasmortgageguy.com. He was our first ever partner. Thank him so much. If you have a refi or a home buy that's coming up into the new year in 2024, make sure you call Carlos or go to the website, thetexasmortgageguy.com. He's a diehard Longhorn fan, but he's an expert in the field, lifelong Austinite who's been nearly a decade in the mortgage biz. He doesn't want to be just a phone call to you. He wants to and give you a quote. He wants to be your guide to help solve complicated problems, strategize, and a very important financial decision in your life. And again, if you're doing that with someone who loves the Longhorns, and you can talk Longhorn baseball and basketball and Eyes on Texas podcast and everything else, Carlos is your guy. Seems to make it simpler because you can trust him. And he's up front right with you from the beginning. TheTexasMortgage.com, also on social media, on Facebook at Carlos Carrion, that's Carreon, and on Twitter at Carlos Carrion36. Find him there. Brings us our first quarter. Second quarter, delivered by the Good Times and Incredible Scratch Comfort Food at Hayes City Store and Ice House. Absolute destination location in Driftwood, Texas, and getting better. They're actually expanding their bathrooms, and they're about to expand their kitchen. They're just, always crowded and having a great time. Everybody's having a big time. Was out there a bunch of birthdays and Christmas parties and graduations going on right now. It really is the place to be. Any night with live music 6 nights a week under the canopy of oak trees. The Ice House and beer garden there with 53 beers on tap. They've got the wood-fired pizzas and truck stop enchiladas. The food is amazing. There's not a bad thing you'll find on the menu. I promise you want to go back again and again to try it all with the Incredible Scratch Comfort Food at Hayes City Store and Ice House. Also, check out their new location, Taste on Main. It's Travis and Tamara Tyndall. They've taken a beautiful new steakhouse and little higher-end restaurant into downtown Buda, charming downtown Buda, right there on Main Street called Taste on Main. Check them both out. They're great, and they're great partners of ours. All right, Mike, let's get into the confluence of high school recruiting and the state of portal combat. We got the portal combat going on, and it's got to be a crazy time for these coaches. We've talked about it.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, you're preparing for bowl games. You're trying to figure things out. You got a week from this coming Wednesday will be National Signing Day. The early window opens, and you got the portal. So you're trying to have exit meetings with your own team, give them the best advice you can give them. I think if you look at the Longhorns, the 7 Longhorns in the portal, you'd probably say that at their exit meeting with Sark and with their position coach that they were kind of told, man, look elsewhere. I mean, it might be best for you. And so the Longhorns really haven't lost a significant person. Isaiah Nayor is probably the biggest name in the portal. Casey Kane, the wide receiver. 3 safeties. B.J. Allen is in the portal. Also, Xavion Bryce, a cornerback. Jalen Catalon is back into the portal after coming in from Arkansas. Sawyer Gorham Welch is in the portal. But these are all guys that are probably not going to play at Texas moving forward. So that's why I say the exit meetings are, let's be realistic about this. But your thoughts on a couple of those guys. You covered them on high school. B.J. Allen's one that jumps off the page that we thought this guy was kind of a star player coming out of Aledo. But that's just the way college football go, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you're always – I think if we look through every recruiting class, even the most successful ones, you're going to miss on 33% of those guys. You know, whether that's evaluation of talent or just fit or, whatever. There's so many variables. These are young people, right, who develop at different ways. But I think it shows the call. I bet if we went through the top 10 teams of the nation, they're having less portal guys leave, right? Like winning cures a lot of things, and you want to stay around winning. That's going to allow, Sark to be picky in the portal, because he's not going to lose many good players from it, right? Why would you leave Texas right now? Like, if it's working, if it's winning, you're not going to leave this place.
Yeah, and to me, with 7 players in the portal, I think the bigger story for Texas right now is who's not in the portal. We haven't seen Malik Murphy's name into the portal. Remember, the portal opened December 4th. It closes January 3rd.
That's the national championship, though. Like, that dude's one snap away from, Tua Tagovailoa.
Playing in a national title game.
And so, Quinn Ewers going to sprain his ankle in a practice, right? I mean, so I think a lot of those guys are going to stick around for the per diem that comes from playing in big bowl games like that, and the opportunity to be in that kind of.
Think about Malik Murphy though. He the portal closes on January 3rd, so they're going to play the first game. Because remember, the NCAA changed the rule. It used to be open all the way through January, but now they've closed it to 30 days, December to early January. Then it opens for 15 more days after spring practice. So if Malik Murphy doesn't jump, he'll have to wait till after spring, continue to get his education at Texas, go through spring practice, and then he can move. if he decides to. But it's what it feels like he's doing.
There's the other option here, is that he's not going to be officially, and I don't. This isn't me reporting. This is just
This is good conversation because I'm trying to figure it out in my own head.
They're doing this behind, not him particularly, but a lot of these guys are doing it behind the scenes to the point where when they're in the portal, they already know exactly where they're going.
True.
So like Malik, and I think him and Sark are close enough. Like there's an understanding, like they all know how this works.
Like he could be here for the game and then possibly the national title game and still move.
And already know kind of where he's going next and have those conversations with those coaches, and Sark be completely cool with that. The same way that Sark's cool with Choate getting the Nevada job and still, Sark gets it. He's been in the NFL. He understands that this is a business even for these quarterbacks. And so I don't think Malik has to just sit on his hands and then on January 2nd be like, oh, shoot, I got to figure this out in 48 hours. I think a lot of those talks are happening through those channels regardless for these big-time quarterbacks because it's a negotiation. They're trying to figure out how much money somebody's got, what the spot is. And so I think it will happen behind the scenes if it's going to happen. And then he could also just wait until after spring and then do it,
But I think ideally he'd want to be with that team for spring practice.
Sure.
But I think what you just said is right, and we could all be big boys, big people about this. I mean, it's a business, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to play for a national championship and be a part of a national championship team.
And he's not third string.
No, he's second string.
He's right there.
Right, and he's going to get great reps during bowl practices. He's going to continue to get the development that he sought from Sark. Learning from Quinn, it'll benefit him big picture to be a part of this because that's wherever he goes, that's where he's going to be. And that's interesting because let's not get caught up in a deadline, I guess would be the way to put that. They can play with that a little bit.
Because I was starting to hear about certain quarterbacks jumping in the portal in like week 10, that they were already reaching out to different schools to see what the NIL money and what the depth chart and what those options are.
And they have advisors, agents, right?
And so somebody's going to look out for Malik if that is what he's ultimately
And Sark would
doing.
too.
Yeah,
Sark almost certainly is.
100%.
100%. All right, so as far as guys who Texas is targeting in the portal, that's an interesting conversation too. You are a UTSA grad. There's a young guy there named Trey Moore.
Meet.
From Spring Branch, Smithson Valley High School. Highly productive edge. He was 6'2", 240, 35 tackles and 35 and a half tackles, 22 sacks in a couple years. You've watched this kid. You watch every UTSA play as an alumnus. Mm-hmm. This is a real good player. Now, he was in Austin over the weekend. Texas looking for production and impact, kind of like Adonai Mitchell. But he also is going to go to Ohio State and then possibly Michigan this week. So he's in demand. What's your thumbnail on Trey Moore?
Yeah, Trey Moore ends up at a Power 4 or 5 school out of high school if it's not the COVID time, right? He's a late bloomer in high school, and so I don't think he had a ton of tape and a lot of like one-on-one. And you're not going to make it out to Smithson Valley by accident. That's one of those plays like you're going there on purpose just for a kid. I don't think he had that type of profile. So, he ends up at UTSA, who does a really good job of finding those type of dudes. And then nowadays in the portal area, he's got a chance to kind of parlay 2 really, really, really good seasons into a big payday. But yeah, a really natural pass rusher. He did that. He led the state in sacks this year. He's been hurt all year. He hadn't even really been practicing. He's like only playing in the games because he's been injured that much. He has some physical limitations, right? Like he's not 5-star, 6'5", 260, run a 4.3. But he can get you some sacks. He will get to the football, and he's got a high motor.
Yeah. Well, and we know Texas is trying to replace the interior of their D-line, right? When you look, this is also interesting to me when we talk about Texas and what they're targeting in the portal, that they're targeting receiver, which we'll talk about coming up, safety, and edge. They're looking for production, which everybody would look at and say, well, they're about to lose Tavondre Sweat to the NFL. They're going to lose Alfred Collins. They're going to lose Byron Murphy. Why aren't they looking for defensive tackles? It tells me Bo Davis likes the dudes he's got. Yep. The Sadir Mitchells, the Dre Bledsoes, the Vernon Brotons, these guys that, we can develop these guys and they can be, but they're also shifting they're looking for more edge. Colin Simmons is coming in from Duncanville, the 5-star, pass rusher. Ethan Burke had a great developmental year. Colton Vosick is coming at the other side, the other Westlake kid. And now they're looking at this kid from UTSA. They want edge pressure. We'll talk about the safeties coming up, but I think they understand with Jalen Ford being gone and the 3 tackles, you're gonna lose some of the guts of that physical defense. They're trying to get faster, more physical, and more pressure coverage built and pressure built as they move into the SEC. But they also feel like Bo Davis can develop what they've got.
Yeah, they want to be big play oriented.
Yeah.
And that happens with sacks and turnovers, right? You're forcing fumbles, forcing sacks, getting interceptions. And they want guys who can make those plays. Like football is less and less about how many yards per play you give up, and it's more about just those impact defensive plays, and they're trying to get more and more of those guys.
Well, and Sadir Mitchell's a real good player. They brought in from New Jersey. He's a massive guy. I mean, if anybody can develop into Tavondre Sweat, that's him. They like Jure Bledsoe with his quick first step. He's more of a Byron Murphy kind of player. So we'll get into roster management beyond the championship, but it is interesting that they're not really looking at tackle. And tackles are hard to find, by the way.
Yeah, that is hard to find. But they were able to find like a Trill Carter.
He'll be back.
Right, but I'm just saying like that was kind of later in the cycle. You always got the spring evaluation period to kind of see what you got, and if those guys aren't blossoming in the way that you want to, then you add that dude in the summer because it's easier to come in as a defensive tackle and go take 20 snaps than it is, at Malik Murphy, for example, jumping into the portal. So I think last year I thought this was interesting with TCU. They were at bowl games, and they were at the Fiesta Bowl, and they were at national championship games while hosting visitors on campus.
Yeah, that's just the
and I just wonder if Texas feels good enough about their roster to where they go, we're going to cherry pick out of the portal this year. We're going to sign our recruiting class, and then anything else we need, we're going to figure out in the spring and the summer because we have more important business to do right now.
As we said, you have a chance to win a national title.
Right.
It almost feels like, which we'll talk about, December 20th, which is a week from this Wednesday, or if you're watching this on a Wednesday, a week from today, that's signing day.
Yeah.
So if you're Sark, you hope to be able to have maybe the portal and the signing day, hay in the barn, as you're a rancher, hay in the barn, and then really turn and focus on the 2 weeks beyond that and not worry about the portal or anything else until you get to early January.
It only gets crazier because you know what happens on December 20th of 2024? That's the first round of the college football playoff.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting moved up closer, right?
Oh,
so instead of 4
teams,
it's going to be early signing period, portal, first round of college football playoff games all happening before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Good luck. This is why dudes are bailing to the NFL.
Yeah, you've got
it's hard to be a college football coach right now.
They're going to have to change some dates, and we'll talk about that in coming episodes.
Insane. It's
too much to have at one time, but it is what it is right now. All right, also in the portal, one of the first guys the Longhorns jumped on was Deion Burks, a wide receiver from Purdue. I know you don't know a ton about him, but he's out of Michigan, speedster. He kind of looks like a Xavier Worthy clone when you see him on tape catching passes from Hudson Card this year at Purdue.
Yeah.
He's 5'11", he's 190, he's got longer arms than most little guys. He's got a good catch radius, but he can run. Track guy, speed, quickness, kind of fills that X-Man role, big picture, if he were to come. He also is going to visit Oklahoma. He's got a lot of people that like him. 2 portal visitors this weekend are Deion Burks from Purdue and then Clemson safety Andrew Makuba.
That's my dude.
Who, I want your thoughts on him. Andrew, of course, played at LBJ. Mm-hmm. His coach was Jamal Fenner. Jamal Fenner is now the director of high school relations for Sark, and there's a lot of people who believe it'll be a shocker if Makuba doesn't end up in Austin playing safety, maybe replacing Jalen Catalon and Jaron Thompson, or maybe even Jade Barron at the nickel spot in the Texas defense in 2024, but he's also going to visit Oregon and Ohio State and some others. But Andrew Makuba, all word is he wants to come back to Austin.
Yeah, I mean, a local kid, just was awesome for that LBJ team. Also played quarterback for them a lot, right? It was a two-way player that led them to a state championship game.
Winner.
Incredibly intelligent dude, like football IQ through the roof, just loves the game, like just gym rat type stuff. Like you said, he's got, he knows the high school relations guy was his head coach, and so he would solve that whole safety can't cover downfield thing because that's one of the best things he's at. I mean, he's solid in run support, but where he thrives, in my opinion, is in coverage, and that's why I think he could play some nickel.
Talk about a big-time safety who the Longhorns was recruiting from the high school level, but Makuba would be an immediate answer to who replaces Jade Barron at star.
Yeah,
and then if you're set with Michael Taff and Derek Williams moving forward, that's your starting safeties. Manny Muhammad. Terrence Brooks. These are your starting corners. It's a pretty good secondary to start with.
It's a pretty good secondary.
And remember, I mean, you're going to lose Jalen Ford in addition to the tackles we talked about, but the recruiting at the linebacker class last year was stellar.
Yeah,
Anthony Hill,
talent is getting better.
Leonga Lafau, Darian Gillette, Samaj Burrell. I mean, they've got dudes at that back end, and they're starting to build this defense. And it feels like, Mike, philosophically, Sark and PK are Pete Kwiatkowski, starting to get the guys they want. They want more coverage. They want safeties who can cover like corners, but also, be physical, like long athletes like Makuba. And then there's Taff Daddy, Michael Taff, who's just assignment sound. He's in the right place all the time. And then Derek Williams, because you want to get home with those pressure packages you want to be able to bring. That's, to be in the national title game right now where you didn't cover great. And we're going to talk about that in the Washington matchup. That's still an issue where they have safeties who are pretty good coming up and cover and tackling, and then they have safeties that are pretty good in coverage, but they don't have both. They're trying to bring those hybrid type players, and Makuba would be one of those.
Yeah, I mean, the athleticism is you can look at the guys who were in the program when Sark got here, even the ones that are still here, like a Jordan Whittington and stuff, where they're really good football players, but they're not the type of athletes that Sark would recruit now. Like he wants twitchy, like quick, fast, explosive athletes. Like a Jalen Ford's a perfect example. Like those linebackers that you listed, they may not end up being as good as Jalen Ford. I don't have a crystal ball. But they have athletic traits that Jalen Ford just didn't possess, right? And so, like, their upside is higher. And Sark is banking on the Stars Matter concept of, I'm not going to hit on every single one of these guys. But if I hit on enough of them, December comes around, we get on a football field with somebody in a playoff game, and we got more dudes than they do, and he's going to count on his development and his coaching ability to do the rest.
Also, Juice Wells is the best wide receiver in the portal. He's from South Carolina. By all accounts, he's my friend Rod Babers has looked at the tape that guys can play. And it's not a coincidence. He plays from South Carolina. Like, he kind of looks like Deebo Samuel, or he looks like Sterling Sharp back in the day. He's just this big catch radius monster who, when he catches the ball, starts running people over. But 50-50 balls are his. They become 70-30 balls. And so, but everybody wants in on him. But I read this from one of the industry insiders. Texas in the mix. Oregon is in the mix. Tennessee was in the mix for a minute, but the ball's apparently out. So Juice Wells is a name to watch. Came from James Madison to South Carolina, and he's a really good friend of Tucker Dorsey, our man Tuck, who we've had on the show before. They're good friends from when they played at James Madison. So Texas trying to lean on that a little bit. And then there's Matthew Golden from Houston, who's in the portal as well. Your thoughts on him? From Klein Kane. Really good and productive player. Torched Texas pretty good back in October. Really good player, Matthew Golden. He's in the portal as well.
Yeah, he struggled at Houston to be the number one guy, but at Texas he wouldn't have to be that. He'd be one of the guys, right? And his athleticism is through the roof. He's still growing. He was an underclassman. He's only going to get more consistent and kind of better at the finer things in the game. Another thing that he would immediately provide is kickoff return. Right?
Yeah,
like Keelan Robinson's going to leave. Matthew Golden is incredible as a returner, kickoff and punts.
I'm sure Jeff Banks is in on that too.
Yes.
You're right about that because Xavier Worthy's moving on, and Keelan Robinson, your two top returners. Plenty of athletes, but that guy can play. That's one to watch. Those are the portal targets, and we mentioned Makuba and Matthew Golden will be on campus this week. They had the kid from UTSA, Trey Moore, in already. We'll keep an eye on Juice Wells and the others, but the Longhorns being very picky in particular with who they're targeting in the portal. As for the high school recruiting rankings and the high school recruiting finish, Longhorns already have 20 commitments. They'd probably like to finish off around 22, 23. The names to watch: Kobe Black is going to make an announcement Wednesday. That's going to be on Dave Campbell's Texas Live, right?
Yes, that will be. We're airing that one. That'll be on Texas Live. So go to texasfootball.com and you'll be. I wish I should know that. But
check it out. We'll get it. But Kobe Black, Waco, 5-star corner, back to the coverage idea they're trying to get to. And there's another kid named Xavier Phil-Sami from McKinney, Texas. He's a Florida commitment, but more and more confidence that with all the changes on the Florida defense and Sark and the staff, Blake Gideon coming hard, he's going to be here this weekend for an official visit. And remember, he'll be here Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. And then on Monday, at midnight Sunday, everything goes dark. You can't. So they're going to get the last conversation with Xavier Phil-Sami, who you like a lot. Just think Derek Williams.
Yes.
Think Derek Williams. I mean, that's what he looks like. And you saw Derek perform this year with the length and the long arms and the freak. You're a big fan of Xavier.
Yeah, I mean, he has 20 pounds, and he's going to be one of the better safeties in the country. I mean, he's got that kind of upside. His head coach, Marcus Shavers, is a good buddy of mine, and he swears by him. And you watch the tape on him, and he's everywhere. He's always around the football. He's more athletic than everybody. That secondary is really good at McKinney. And so, yeah, he would be a big addition for the Texas class.
Well, we'll watch that. Kobe Black, Xavier Phil-Sami, and apparently one of the players that's coming late is a tight end from Calhoun, Georgia, named Emery Winston. Emery Winston, 6'3", 230. And I think people have taken notice of what Texas has done with Jatavion Sanders and how the tight end, Sark talks about it being the second most important position on his deep offense. And he's a Peach State native. He's going to announce on December 18th down to Texas, Ohio State, and UCF, which is interesting. But a lot of people think Emery Winston is a guy to watch for Texas. That could be your 23. If you get those three, Texas at 23, and that's your high school recruiting class as of Wednesday. And as you say, after whatever happens in January with Texas, you can still kind of repivot and see what else you need. Big picture. But there you go. That's our update on recruiting, the portal combat, and the high school. Second quarter delivered by the incredible Scratch Food and Amazing Times at Hayes City Store and Ice House in Driftwood, Texas, and Taste on Main. Get out there. If you have an anniversary, Christmas, you want to get out for a nice dinner, get to either one. Either one are tremendous. Hayes City Store and Taste on Main in charming downtown Buda. And, of course, Hayes City Store is in Driftwood. Halftime. Delivered with just the right pressure by our friends at One Source Gas. Richard Strever and his team, your one-stop shop in Central Texas for all your compressed gas needs. They are the best compressed gas provider in Central Texas, whether it's CO2, nitrogen, oxygen, propane, many more, whatever you need to run your business on a daily basis and weekly basis. One Source Gas is better. There's a reason their market share is growing faster than anybody else's, because they're taking market share from others because they do it better. The service, hospitality, consumer or customer relations is through the roof there. So if you're a bar owner looking to keep your beer taps flowing, veterinary, doctor, medical industry, industrial or more, One Source Gas is your spot. Find them online at onesourcegasatx.com. That is the spelling of the word one, O-N-E, onesourcegasatx.com, or call Richard, 512-214-8484. Nolan Hogan, our digital producer. We've got a lot of football on the brain, but in addition to our NFL look at the Longhorns starring on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays, how about that volleyball team?
Oh, yeah. Texas volleyball advances to their 15th Final Four. They defeated Tennessee 3-2 on Wednesday night, and then they went on to beat Stanford 3-1 on Friday night. That was a late game, so if you were up watching it, it started at 9:30, so it was a West Coast game. So they will be playing the winner of Wisconsin and Nebraska.
That's Wisconsin. They're playing
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
They're playing Wisconsin. They're playing
Thursday
Wisconsin
night.
now.
Yeah, Thursday night in Tampa, which means for you folks who didn't want to stay up till midnight to watch the volleyball team on the West Coast, Tampa East Coast, so you get to see them on Thursday night for Jared Elliott. And 15th Final Four, Mike, since Jared Elliott has gotten their 15th Final Four. And Nolan, I mean, come on. Yeah. I mean, he's been to the Elite Eight 17 of the last 18 years. It's the most consistent program on the UT campus, and I know so many people who are hinged on every play, because so many of our friends and so many of my friends, their daughters play volleyball, they're into volleyball, club volleyball, and they grow up watching it, and now you have this team who is the elite of the elite. They're defending national champions, and good luck to them this weekend in the Final Four with Wisconsin on Thursday night, and props. This was supposed to be a step back year with the losses of the Logan Egglestons of the world, but Madison Skinner's unbelievable, Asia O'Neal. NBA fans will know her father, Jermaine O'Neal. Her Asia is a superstar, and they're amazing to watch. It's watching football games are compelling, but watching those volleyball matches, man, are unbelievable. Yeah. The intensity, the athleticism of these ladies up over the net, it really is fun to watch. So check out that starting Thursday night, the Final Four in Wisconsin. In Tampa Bay against Wisconsin.
Yes, and then in that game, Madison Skinner ended the game with 24 kills from the back.
Come on.
A lot of them come from the back row. So if you can imagine a 6'3" girl jumping from the back row, hitting it 80 miles an hour at your face, I'm getting out of the way of that.
Nice.
Thanks.
Yes. Congrats to Jared Elliott and
She's
that team with the Eyes on Texas multicast. All right, Nolan, what about the NFL guys balling out in the National Football League? A lot of these guys we're going to watch play in 3 weeks. They're going to be playing on Sundays beyond this year, but who are the guys doing it this year?
So we had our special teams guy on the New England Patriots, Brandon Schooler, had himself a solo tackle.
Can he play offense for them, please? Good Lord.
Yeah, a little bit. Andrew Beck actually played some offense this week with the injury-riddled Texans. He had one reception for 26 yards, which was second leading on the team, which shows you how much offense was played by the Texans in that game.
Zero.
Atlanta, Bijan Robinson getting in the end zone again. He had 10 carries versus the Bucs, 34 yards, a touchdown with 5 receptions for 54 yards. In that same game, Taquan Graham got some action with 1 tackle. In Chicago, playing Detroit, Deontay Foreman, steady getting carries with 11 carries this week for 50 yards and 2 receptions for 22 yards. Same team, Roshan Johnson, he is getting less carries this year, but I think he's becoming more of a short down, third down back. So he had 1 carry for 6 yards.
And they beat Detroit. Good for Chicago. That
big
was a
win
big win for them.
Chicago. DJ Moore almost saved me in fantasy this year, but Justin Herbert did not. Seattle, moving to Seattle, Quandre Diggs continuing his solid season, having 6 tackles, 3 solo, second on the team in tackles this week. Moving down to Kansas City versus Buffalo, Charles Omenihu had a solid week this week, had 3 tackles, 2 solo, a sack, and a TFL. So he was all over the field this week. Devin Duvernay, this is our special team. These are more special teamer guys. Devin Duvernay had 1 kick return for 21 yards and a punt return for 14. They let the other guy return a punt, and he won the game for him.
Well, Devin Duvernay got hurt, and then Tylan Wallace, you'll remember him from Oklahoma State.
Yes.
He returned the punt for a touchdown in overtime to beat the Rams. That's the second time this year, they've had a walk-off punt return for touchdown to win an NFL game. Happened early with the Jets and the Bills, which is just crazy. But great game there in Baltimore. Is that enough? Is that all?
In that same game, we can't forget about the kickers, Dad. Can't forget about the kickers.
Jay Tuck.
In that same game, Justin Tucker was 3 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points with 11 points. And then down in L.A., Cameron Dicker had 1 extra point for 1 point.
He was my fantasy kicker. One stinking point. How about that, Mike Craven? As we get into our third quarter, there's our halftime brought to you by One Source Gas. A battle of Texas kickers in the Ravens-Rams game. Cameron Dicker and Justin Tucker.
He's on the Chargers.
Oh, Chargers?
Dicker's
Chargers, LA. Okay. So I thought that was a matchup. No, Dicker was in the Chargers game, who also didn't do nothing. Nothing. But yes, kickers. And then you think Bert Auburn can be an NFL kicker? How about the year Bert Auburn has had, by the way?
He was first team All-State at Dave Campbell's Texas football.
From where?
I'm saying for the college team.
Yeah, he was. You're right.
Yeah,
so Bert Auburn, we talk about distinguished Longhorns, set records for kicking, and then he also was first team All Big 12, and that's awesome. Good for him.
Yeah,
became a
You're gonna have to get picky soon. There's gonna be too many players to run through all of.
When we started putting 11 and 12 in, we meaning the Longhorns, you're gonna have to pare through it because we're gonna have like 50 guys.
Yeah.
In the National Football League. But that is delivered on time by Just the Right Pressure by One Source Gas of Central Texas, on site at onesourcegas.com. Thank you to Richard Streeter. We mentioned all of our partners are going to New Orleans, so we'll see them all there for the big game in 21 days. Richard Streeter being one of them, Wes Murray and our friends at Grande Equipment. Also, Dr. Greg Eckert and the Brain Vault Technology, what brings you the third quarter. Brain Vault, much more than a mouthpiece. It's an orthotic that is proven, research-based, and on the fields of play to be a way for young athletes to play hard but play safe by minimizing the risk of concussions. All right, third quarter, Mike, I wanted to get into your thoughts 3 weeks out to the Texas-Washington matchup. And the way I'll phrase this conversation, styles make fights, right? I mean, we've been over that over and over. And for when Texas played K-State or Texas Tech or Oklahoma State, that just felt like a fight Texas was going to win. Now, the K-State game got a little tougher when Malik Murphy started turning the ball over and punts started getting blocked. But they were dominating that game, and K-State had to abandon their running game. Washington's more in line with the OU, U of H, TCU kind of thing, and they might be better than they are better than them. They got Michael Penix and 3 NFL receivers. That's the challenge for Texas. This isn't a style of fight that they're kind of built to dominate in. They can hold up, but what's your 3 weeks out feel on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think Washington is the least talented team in the college football playoff, but they are the worst matchup for Texas.
Yeah, that's one good bumper sticker right there.
Michael Penix and that wide receiver core would scare the living daylights out of me if I was Texas. And they're going to have to figure out a way to scheme around it. They're not going to get that much better in coverage over the next month. They'll improve on some stuff and clean some things up, but they're going to have to come up with some things to confuse Penix the way Oklahoma did to Ewers early. Like Ewers settled in and had himself a day, but they got him a couple of times early, and that was enough to create some points to then hang on and win a shootout. To me, this feels like Texas is going to have to score 40 points to win a football game. Like, I don't see this anyway being 21-17. This is much more likely in my mind to be 42-38 and look a lot like the first Washington-Oregon game that we saw this year.
Yeah. Now, Washington enters the game and they look like a tired team, even though they beat Oregon. But before the Oregon game that they won on that Friday night, which was a hell of a gut check performance by that football team, and it tells you Kalen DeBoer the other night in the College Football Awards was the National Coach of the Year. Now, Sark's a good coach. This guy's a really good coach. He's going to have his team ready to play. But they look tired at the end of the year. They won 8 of their last 9 games by single digits. But then they beat Oregon. They rose. That's why they were a 10-point underdog to Oregon. It looked like they were leaking oil and trying to limp to the finish line, and they rose up and beat the Oregon team in Las Vegas. And as you said, their offense has as much talent left as any team in the field, with Michael Penix, who won the Maxwell Award as the best player in college football, didn't win the Heisman, but was up there for it.
By the way, that's insane, right? that like.
Well, we'll get to it coming up in our Final Four. I want to get into that. No, we'll go deeper on that because did they get it right becomes the question on the Heisman Trophy in our Final Four. I just hold that. But Penix, a real good player. But Rome Duns, the receiver, is going to be a first-round draft pick. Dunze up there with Marvin Harrison Jr. and those kind of players. Other pair of future pros in Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. These are NFL players, and so you got to guard them. And a very good coach. So the bigger issue is this: why you think it's going to be a shootout? Is their defense isn't great at all. I mean, they've got Braylon Trice, who's a really good pass rusher, but they're 125th or 21st in pass defense. Texas can score too. These are the two best skill teams in the country. I just think my biggest thing for Texas is the size. Texas's lines of scrimmage, this is the big humans conversation. They're just bigger. Mm-hmm. They're bigger and more physical. And so can you get interior pressure, Mike, against Michael Penix? How about this? A couple stats on Michael Penix that Longhorn fans have to understand, and we'll talk about it again next week. And this is Rod Baber's deep dive thoughts. But 9% of the time, pressure when you pressure Michael Penix, only 9% of the time does he get sacked. Very elusive, subtly. But so for example, Quinn Ewers, when he's pressured, gets sacked 22% of the time. This guy evades Jalen Milroe's more than that. J.J. McCarthy's more than that. But interior pressure is a problem for him. So you wonder if Texas with Sweat and Murphy and their center at Washington's undersized. Sweat and Murphy should be able to get a push. And you wonder if one of the plans you talked about, getting some early opportunities, is to bring interior second level pressure, like get the push and then bring an Anthony Hill through the gap, or bring a safety through the A gap and get interior pressure to where he's used to edge players, right, coming after him, right at him. And he's a quarterback who's battled a couple knee injuries in his career. Get in his face. That's where you could force some things, but you can't let him sit back there because he will pick you apart with NFL receivers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they play it. Do they go after him? Do they worry about his legs and shadow him a little bit, like Dylan Gabriel game that they had? Because it does feel like a lot like that Oklahoma game. He's gonna have to play really well. He's gonna have to play Heisman level type game. He's not gonna be an average quarterback in Washington win. And so if you're the Longhorns, you got a month to figure it out. But I think one of the keys defensively beyond that is making them one-dimensional. As ridiculous as it sounds, you have to force it to be Michael Penix. If they allow that running game to get going as well, like
Dylan
it did
Johnson
against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, then you got no shot, because then all of a sudden you got a dedicated extra defender into the box, and now you're one-on-one everywhere, and we know how that story is going to go. So first and foremost, you have to make them one-dimensional, and then you just have to make some plays. Penix may throw for 500 yards. But if you can steal a couple possessions, if you can bend but don't break and force a couple field goals, and then your offense be efficient, you can win this football game.
Yeah, agreed. And the Longhorns are a 4 or 5 point favorite in the game. I'd also say this might be a game where Sark wants to slow it down a little bit, control the ball, be able to run the football with your big humans, and play a little defense with your offense if you can, and not try to get into shootout all the time. Slow it down, get your defense, get some rest, and be fresh when you do have to stop this really good offense. And you should have the size advantage up front defensively to run the football. Now, and give Kalen DeBoer credit, because against Oregon, one of the reasons they won that game is they flipped tendency.
Yes.
They were heavy pass, and then in that game, Dylan Johnson, their running back, ran the ball 28 times, which was the most he's ever gotten the ball. So they just said, look, we have to slow this down. Sark could kind of do the same thing the other way to them. I'll say one other stat that is just eye-popping in this game. Texas fans have complained a lot this year, at least early, with Quinn Ewers throwing deep balls that were unsuccessful. Quinn Ewers this year has thrown what they define as a deep ball 39 times. Michael Penix has thrown over 100 deep balls. They're going to throw the ball down the field. They're going to push the ball down the field.
My buddies in the NFL circles and stuff say that Michael Penix throws the best deep ball that they've ever seen.
And he'll throw.
That's hyperbole, but there's something to that. He can throw it vertically, and that's Texas's Achilles heel. And to your point, they have to figure out a way to make him get the ball out before that can happen.
That's right. And that becomes the chess match. That's going to be a hell of a game 3 weeks. We'll do it again next week in our episode next week, episode 34, talking about this game and drilling down even further. Hopefully we'll start to hear from some of the coaches and players. But it is over 100 deep balls thrown. And you're right, he's a great passer of the ball deep. He's got 3 NFL, 50-50 balls, he'll throw it. Mm-hmm. He'll just throw it if he sees a coverage he likes, and he'll put it on the right shoulder and trust his guy to make a play. And that's what this team is about. They're explosive. But they played a game against Arizona State where they didn't score an offensive touchdown. So, there's a sample size that tells you a little bit of everything you want. And if you go back to that Arizona State game, they played press coverage, but they played 2 deep safeties, which Texas could try to copy, that we saw a lot in the press coverage from Manny Muhammad and Terrence Brooks late in the year. press coverage but deep safeties, dare them to run the football and take that away from them. That could be a game changer for Texas.
And just make them do 10-play drives.
That's right.
You know, you
That's
just
right.
got to make them matriculate the ball down the football field.
Thank you, Hank Stram. All right, third quarter. There you go. Little Texas-Washington look. Good stuff right there with Mike Craven. Brought to you by our friend Dr. Greg Eckert and the Brain Vault technology, which is obviously much more than a mouth guard. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about this. The Brain Vault technology is growing. Just saw several teams playing in the high school football playoffs who their entire teams are fitted with the Brain Vault technology. I've told you that for the last 8 years, Drew Pittman, who's a partner in the Brain Vault, is over 100 NFL players been wearing this orthotic with no reported concussions. That's what this was designed for. Drew Pittman, the agent, came to Dr. Greg Eckert and said, man, I'm looking to protect my players better, make sure they're playing safer. And Dr. Eckert and he developed this. It's now backed by science and patented, and it reduces the risk of concussion. It's a mouthpiece, but it's much more than a mouth guard. As we've said, it aligns the lower jaw in the correct position, which strengthens your neck muscles, which minimizes concussive forces. Strong neck muscles help slow the head down during contact and help minimize stretch and shear of brain tissue, which leads to the traumatic brain injuries. I know it's a lot of science in there, but that's how it works, and it's fit and custom built for your mouth and your jawline, but it does work. So go to the website, brainvault.com. That's brainvault.com. You can find the website there. Right at the top, you'll see what is Brain Vault. Read all about it. Schedule a fitting for an individual or a group, entire teams, like the Texas cheerleading team, like the Texas lacrosse team, high school football teams all over the area, in Austin and beyond, now getting fitted. So join the movement at brainvault.com. Custom fittings now available. They'll come to you or you come to them at brainvault.com. Dr. Greg Eckert bringing you the third quarter. All right, fourth quarter, Mike, final 4 questions. Let's pick up your thought on the Heisman Trophy. Did they get it right?
I mean, I don't think so. I would have voted Michael Penix. I mean,
Me too.
I know Jaden Daniels had a great year, but I see the Heisman as more of a narrative award than a production award. And I could tell the whole story of 2023's college football season without mentioning LSU one time. They were out of the college football playoff by week 5. I mean, when's the last time you watched an LSU game? Because you hadn't had to, right? And maybe that's not what the award's supposed to be, but that's exactly what the award is. And to me, it feels like the voters were going to go Bo Nix. They assumed Oregon was going to beat Washington. They assumed Bo Nix was going to have a big day. That was going to be their Heisman Trophy selection. Bo Nix doesn't play great. Oregon loses. They look around and they go, who had the best statistical year? Jaden Daniels plays in the SEC. Give it to him.
Tend to agree with that. I will defend Jaden a little bit in that his numbers were ridiculous.
Oh, he's incredible.
I mean, it's kind of a Lamar Jackson kind of year.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. When Lamar Jackson was going video game at Louisville, everybody watched, right? He had a lot of
That's my
primetime
point.
Thursday
like
games.
Johnny Manziel's been thrown out as a thing. It's like you couldn't tell the 2012 season without Johnny Manziel. Like
Right.
he was, even when they were he
Beat
was
Alabama,
a
he
big
was just
part of that year.
Grease fire.
But
Or grass fire. It was a good thing. He was everywhere.
LSU didn't do that, ever.
They were never a national narrative. You're right. But, I mean, 5,000 yards total, 60 touchdowns accounted
incredible.
for. It was a Lamar Jackson kind of year. And Lamar Jackson's team had 3 losses the year that at Louisville he won the Heisman. So that's the best thing I can compare it to. But you're right. I would have voted for Penix, too, and I said that. I thought the Oregon-Washington game was a Heisman Trophy decider. And I thought Penix played really well in that game. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this for Michael Penix. He was classy at the Heisman ceremony. This is another thing Texas has to deal with in 3 weeks. I mean, that's the whole Vince Young chip on the shoulder thing. But he had the purple suit going, which was really cool, the velvet. And then his sport jacket had every teammate's name embroidered in the jacket. Only in the day of NIL can you can afford to do that, I understand. But it was pretty cool. I mean, a total team player, class act, handled it right. Jaden Daniels, goes down with what Chris Weinke is just unheralded Heisman winners.
And think about this. To me, this is a win for the transfer portal. And to me, it's important to talk about when it does something right for players because we always talk about the negatives, not you and I, but just in general parlances.
Sure.
Jaden Daniels would be wasting away at Arizona State, right? Michael Penix would be at Indiana with his coach that just got fired. Now, maybe Indiana's coach doesn't get fired and Michael Penix is still there and all that kind of stuff, right? But my point is that for so long in college athletics, we've watched these players go to these schools and then we judge them based on their results in college, and we don't give the context of where they went and the system and the coaches and the success. Now that players have the ability to move around and find places that work for them as they mature and figure out who they are as players, they're able to go to spots where their skills can be shown, and now he's going to be a multimillionaire and not just the quarterback at Indiana. And the same for Cam Ward, who started at Incarnate Word because he was an option quarterback in West Columbia. Now he's proven himself at Washington State, and he's going to go get millions of dollars.
Maybe Ohio State.
Right, and then go be an NFL draft pick. And in the old system, he would have been at Incarnate Word because that was his lot in life.
I think that's well said. I mean, 3 of the 4 Heisman finalists were transfer quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Bo Nix might have been languishing on the bench at Auburn. Had
Right.
they over-recruited him?
Bo Nix's arc is incredible.
Yeah. And guess what? The NFL likes it, too, because they have more developed quarterbacks. They're tired of taking Mitch Trubisky, who had 13 starts at North Carolina. These guys who haven't played any college football, but they're talented. You want a guy who's started 60 games in college football. That's important to the national. It'll be whether they're going to be backups or starters, doesn't matter. It's going to improve the level of quarterback play in the National Football League because guys are going to play more football games at the high levels of college and give them opportunities. Like Dylan Gabriel's leaving Oklahoma to go play at Oregon now. I mean, he may end up in the NFL at some point, but he's going to go to a system perfect for him. I don't know what that means. I want to ask you this about the latest from around Texas. What does Dylan Gabriel coming in mean for a guy like Austin Novosad from Dripping Springs that, hey, I thought maybe I was going to play behind Bo Nix one year, and now I'm playing behind Dylan Gabriel. Wonder if Austin Novosad's thinking about moving.
Yeah, I am very curious. I always think I love the big picture part of this type of stuff. Like I think we get lost in the sauce too much. We don't talk about the big stuff here. If I'm a recruit, I'm starting to just start my career at a place that I can go play. Like unless I'm next level generational type guy. If I'm Quinn Ewers, I'm going to go to I don't want to just throw out a random school, but I'm going to go to Cal and play for a year and put that on tape and then go somewhere else, right?
Get the experience.
Get the experience, play, make a little bit of extra money, all that kind of stuff. Because when you go to these big programs now, there is so much pressure to win that if you're the head coach at Oregon, you're not going to bet on the 19-year-old when you can bring in the 23, 24-year-old who's won at 2 previous stops. That's just a safer bet to make. And so if you're these young quarterbacks, you probably are no longer, I shouldn't say no longer, but I do wonder if places that usually wouldn't get the 5-star quarterback start to get the 5-star quarterback because they know if it works out the way that they think they can parlay that into the place they wanted to play all the time. The Georgia quarterback, that 5-star Dylan Raiola, I can't say his last name.
Raiola.
He's going to Nebraska this weekend to go on a visit. And that is because he knows that he can go there, play, make some money, and then if he's really, really good, he can then go to Georgia if he wants to in a year.
Yeah, the bounce. The normal progression's over, right? It just
right.
feels
You're not going
like
to sit and wait anymore.
Well, think about Sam Hartman, 4 years at Wake Forest. You don't have to go play 4 years at Wake Forest. Play 2 years at Wake Forest now, and you could bounce to Notre Dame, right? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about. And there's the kid Riley Leonard who went to Duke for a couple of years, and then he's bouncing somewhere.
Yeah.
Cam Ward, you mentioned, and maybe that's the track. I don't have to go. I can go play outside the spotlight a little bit, get that experience, and then year or two from now, I'll cash in. Big picture. That's a good point, as always, by Mike Craven.
Can I give you my solution to this?
Yes.
You give 5 years to play 5. You get rid of the red shirts completely, right? You get 5 years of eligibility. You lose a year of eligibility if you transfer unless your head coach leaves or you graduate, right? So you get a free transfer if your head coach leaves, and you get a free transfer as a graduate. Otherwise, you lose a year. Now, that is kind of unfair, but the way I'm balancing this in my head is you're getting 5 years of eligibility. So by transferring and you lose that year, you're still getting the exact same eligibility that you would get now. You just get an extra year if you stay at the same place your whole career. And it would stop the tampering. Because the tampering is what is really being a problem in college football right now. And if Texas, and I shouldn't use, everybody tampers, right? But if Texas has more money than UTSA, getting Trey Moore doesn't do them all that much if he's got to sit out a year. They're less likely to go. Ohio State's not going to give Trey Moore $500,000 to leave UTSA if he's got to sit out a year. But he would be able to transfer once he was a grad, if Jeff Traylor left and got another job, or if he was willing to sit out that year. And I think the tampering would go away largely if that was the case.
Love it. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas football senior writer. Any thoughts on coaching carousel going on around the college level here that you're covering? What are the big stories now? Willie, we know since we talked last, Willie Fritz is at Houston. Jake Spavital now OC at Baylor. What other things have jumped off for you this week?
Yeah, Colin Klein being hired as the OC at A&M was a big one. Joe Gillespie being fired as the TCU defensive coordinator.
He was in the national title game a year ago.
Yeah, and they got better on defense. Like, they gave up 1.2 fewer points per game on defense this year. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles. They score 7 points fewer than they did last year, and then the defensive coordinator gets fired because of it. It just shows the margins of football, and I think it's your point earlier about how, like, you have to take advantage of when you're in these opportunities because how quickly it can go. SMU was 4-1 last year, or 4-0 in regular season games, in 1-point games. 5-1 overall in one-possession games. This year they're 0-6, right? So, like, it can just turn as quickly as that. Winning those close games made them a national championship team last year. Losing the close games this year got the defensive coordinator fired, and they're not going to a bowl game.
And I did see where they're going to hire the fired Boise State head coach. Andy Avalos to be their DC. So, obviously, Sonny Dykes had somebody in mind when he made that move. But you're right. I mean, obviously, the Kendall Briles experiment was a bad one. Going from Garrett Riley to I know people who have kids who play on that offense who said, man, what a difference. It was a totally different thing playing for one to the other, and it never really fit with Sonny Dykes. So the Kendall Briles thing lasted 1 year, I should say.
No, he's still there.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's
coming back.
Yeah, he's still the.
I heard he's out.
He's still the OC at TCU. He can't break news here, but I think he's coming back.
All right, well, that's breaking news. I thought there was going to be a change. Okay, so one real quick thing I saw where Joel Klatt has his top 5 Heisman winners candidates for next year, with Quinn Ewers as number 1, followed by Jalen Milroe, J.J. McCarthy, Michigan, Dylan Gabriel, Oregon, Shedeur Sanders, Colorado. Thoughts?
I would add Cam Ward there if he goes to Ohio State. But yeah, I mean, Dylan Gabriel's going to put up insane numbers in the Will Stein offense.
Yes, he is at Oregon.
Like that. Like, if they was doing that with Bo Nix, like, I think Dylan Gabriel's even a better, more productive quarterback than Bo Nix was leading into where he was at Oregon. So I think he is up there. Quinn Ewers obviously going to be one. I think my money may be on Jalen Milroe. I think Alabama is going to be really, really good next year. But yeah, Cam Ward would be my sleeper pick there.
Agreed. The Washington State quarterback who's going to transfer somewhere, maybe Ohio State, with that weird story with Kyle McCord going 12-1, and then he's transferring out for 11-1. Huh?
It's just musical chairs.
Musical chairs. And he may end up in Nebraska. We'll see. Okay, so last thing I want to ask you, you've not been in New Orleans.
I've never been in New Orleans. I've driven through New Orleans and eaten some food on my way to Biloxi, Mississippi, but I have never actually stayed in New Orleans for any real period of time.
Well, you're going to enjoy it. You love food and beignets and good times, and we'll be there.
I do love Cajun food. My brother played at Southeastern Louisiana, which is in Hammond, and so you just never had to keep driving to New Orleans. I always stop sooner. So I am pretty familiar with Louisiana food, but I'm excited to get New Orleans going. I think it's the biggest city I haven't visited in America, probably.
Well, I can't wait to hear your thoughts afterwards. You're going to love it. I mean, there's some amazing food. I mean, there's food and drink, and there's wildness, and there's crazy, there's gambling. I mean, it's pretty much anything you want to do in New Orleans, but I can't wait for you to visit and see it. And you like to gamble a little bit. You like to get over to Harrah's. And
I do enjoy to gamble.
You go over to Manning's. Archie Manning has a restaurant right there by Harrah's. Or you can get in and sports bar and food, and then Harrah's right across the street. That's not a bad thing, right?
No. Well, it can be a bad thing.
It can be a bad thing.
It can become a bad thing, but it can be a gret thing as well.
Well, looking forward to it, and we'll certainly be bringing you the multicast before and after. Through the holiday break, we'll take... We'll do a shorter segment through Christmas, but we will be here with you next week as well, of course, because we've got National Signing Day coming up on Wednesday. We have a special guest next week to help us with the finalizing of the signing day class for Texas, plus the latest on the portal. But let me ask you last thing. Is there a couple of bowl games that does not include Texas that you're most intrigued in covering or talking about from the Texas schools you cover?
Yeah, Texas State plays Rice. In one of the, I think it's First Responder Bowls. It's hard to keep track of what the bowl games are. I'm excited for that one. I'm going to San Marcos. We're recording this on Monday. I'm going by San Marcos tomorrow morning on Tuesday to kind of talk to the AD and the president and the head coach about like what this means. Because for Texas State, this is the first time they've made bowl game ever in the history of being an FBS program. So a big one for them. I'm a UTSA grad, as you mentioned earlier. They played Marshall in a bowl game up in Frisco in the Frisco Bowl. UTSA's never won a bowl game. That senior class that's about to graduate with Frank Harris, Rashad Wisdom, Joshua Cephas, they basically own every single record at UTSA one way or the other. They've won the first 2 conference championships ever at UTSA. Winning a bowl game is kind of the last thing on their list. And so in an age where bowl games matter less and less, right? Like Texas Tech's not going to be jazzed for the Texas Bowl. But there's still some programs out there like UTSA, like Texas State, like Rice, who's Texas State's opponent, where playing in a bowl game is still a big deal, and winning that bowl game is still, an important part of building the program.
Love it. No, I mean, that's go G.J. Kinney. Bring it home for the Bobcats. Go UTSA. That's really what these bowl games are about now, because there's going to be a coach change or a transfer in pretty much every one of these other bowl games that in the Final Four or even the New Year's Day bowls.
What do they do once the playoff expands and the bowl games get even more meaningless? Because right now it's only 4 teams, and so I know ESPN has helped to kill these bowls by only talking about the college football playoff, but I do think once there's 12 teams in, man, we're really
it's going to get even different. I mean, just think how much it's going to change the calendar. It's going to become, as you said, this week will be the semifinal or the first round games.
Right. Because right now the appetite of the bowl game is that, there's nothing else on, so we'll watch the Rosetta Stone Bowl because it's December 26th. I don't want to talk to my in-laws. I want to gamble on something. I'm going to watch this bowl game or whatever. But when you have playoff games to watch, now you have no need for that because you have real quote unquote football games that with real stakes.
I mean, this has all been moving here, but I do think that by next December, championship Saturday with the because the automatic bid for a conference champion becomes huge. Yeah. Just think about this year. I mean, if Oklahoma State had beaten Texas, they'd be in. Yeah. Right? I mean, they'd be in. And that's just the way that's going to play. Louisville could have played their way into the 12-team playoff despite their record because the 4 conference champions are in. Yeah. They'll be seeded lower, and they may have to go on the road as a 12 seed or 11 seed, but that's okay. That makes Saturday compelling. That makes that Saturday even more compelling, and then to sit up on Sunday morning and how they seed them, who falls where, then the first-round games, being in the Final Four, and the top 4 still matters a lot. So. But you're right. Then the bowl games will get less and less important. They already are. But I think that's good. Because one of the things that drove me crazy about the fallout from the Florida State controversy was that there were all these non-college football fans, like Mike Greenberg on ESPN, pretending like this is new. Like we used to decide the college football champions. We'd go to bed and wake up and the AP would vote for one and the UPI would vote for another.
Yeah, the good old days.
Yeah, we used to have conference bowl tie-ins that the best team would not play the best team because they couldn't. Yeah. This has never been done right. I mean, let's not pretend. I think the 14 playoff and then the 12-team playoff is actually getting closer to a better way to actually decide it on the field. So let's not get too crazy here. It's never been done like they do it in the pros or anywhere else. It's always been a little jacked up.
I'm not. I think people who have listened to this podcast should know by now. I'm not much of a hot take person. I'm not a very takey guy. I'd be better in my career if I had bigger opinions. I think the sport was better before we cared so much about who the national champion was.
Well,
I miss the regionalness of the sport and just beating your neighbors and trying to win your conference. And if you go undefeated and get voted to be the national champion, great. But it's too big of a sport. It's not the NFL where there's 32 teams or the Major League Baseball where you're never going to get a real sample size. And the reason I say that is because the G5 is never going to get a real shake. The 12-team playoff isn't going to get expanded to be fairer. It's getting expanded to get more SEC and more Big Ten team schools in there. And so it's not going to be the March Madness tournament. It's not going to be that. It's going to be rematches of Ole Miss versus Alabama and Georgia versus Penn State. And because Penn State was 9th this year, whatever they are. Did they deserve to play for a national title? No. We don't need to see it or whatever.
Well, it's designed to get, as you said, more of the big conferences teams in, but also to be able to say everyone gets a shot, because if you win the conference, you're in. So everyone at least gets a seat at the table. So you're appeasing, supposedly appeasing both sides. When you're, I don't disagree with you. I don't remember when I was a kid. I never remember not liking college football more than I could because, I don't know who actually is the right voted champion between these two polls. I don't remember it hurting my viewership. I do remember thinking, I wish they would play.
Yes.
I wish they would play.
But in November, it didn't bother me what was going to happen later. And Texas versus Tech could matter because it didn't have to be involved in this greater conversation. Everything we do in college football now has to be in a vortex towards the national championship. Everything is pocketed towards the national championship. And we're losing, I think, the bones of what college football was for the 10 teams that on a year in, year out basis can win the national championship. And we've told all of the other teams that going 9-3 and winning a bowl game, it's pretty meaningless. It's just for the national championship. And we're all to blame for that. But I think college football was better when you could enjoy being 8-4 and beating your neighbors, and that wasn't like some dude's going to get fired because of it.
I think I'm going to like it better when it is coming. That's just be me. We'll see. But that's a good hot take. I like it. And I'm on the opposite side, but I think we're going to decide it on the field. But either way, I think it's going to be – I can't wait for December moving forward.
I'm also anti-tournament, which also kind of – like I'm an English Premier League soccer team, and they decide they're champion over like a 38-game season, and it's who did better.
There's no tournament.
And like I just think that's a better way of picking the team. Like that shows who the best team was over the season and not who the best team is like at a certain point of the year.
That's fair.
And so like I'm just not a big tournament guy. I feel like we just have to tournamentize everything in America or in Western sports, and this is just another example of like
They would have had an NBA in-season tournament. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. Everything's got to be a tournament. It's like, what are we doing? Like, why can't you just enjoy the sport and watch the game? But
by the way, I just looked it up. New Orleans, when you're there, go to a restaurant called Giacomo's.
Giacomo's.
Like Jacques, Jaqueus, Jock-Emos.
Okay.
Best restaurant I've ever been to. Serious.
I am taking recommendations.
Giacomo's.
At Craven Mike.
It's not in downtown, though. You're going to have to get an Uber. Might take you 10 minutes to get over there.
That's fine.
But I went to that restaurant. I was covering Super Bowl, whatever number it was. It was Ravens-Niners, the Harbaugh Bowl.
Okay.
And I went to that restaurant with Dat Wynn. Remember, of course, we all remember Dat Wynn from Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And I like food, but he grew up on the coast, like shrimping, right? And he was the one that said, "This is the best food I've ever had." And I said, "Well," and I thought it was pretty damn good. But if Dat Wynn, who grew up eating this kind of food and like pulling it out of the Gulf, if he says that's the best food, that was the best food I've had. Giacomo's.
Yeah. Okay.
That was 10 years ago. May have changed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
No,
look it up. Giacomo's.
I'm in.
All right, I'll give you another.
I'm gonna be there for like a week, so I need
Giacomo's. Down. It's in the. I don't even know the district. It's a little bit of an Uber ride out of downtown. All right, everybody. That's going to be a wrap on another edition of the Eyes on Texas multicast. We're a product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network and powered by Grande Equipment. Thank you, Wes Murray and your team. Also, thanks to our digital producer, Nolan Hogan, for the halftime coverage and all the work. Executive producer, Griffin Hogan. Incredible work again this week. Thanks to our founding partners, Carlos Carrion, TheTexasMortgageGuy.com, Hayes City Store in Driftwood, and Taste on Main in Buda, One Source Gas of Central Texas, Dr. Greg Eckert, my pearly white, beautiful restored smile, and his Brain Vault technology, more than a mouthpiece. And, of course, we're powered by our presenting partner at Grande Equipment. It's the multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football and football in Texas. Find it, and it's available to watch weekly on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football YouTube channel, the Horn Austin YouTube channel, available for download on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Have a great week.